It is hard to imagine that it is almost 25 years since the release of the original Gladiator movie, the first collaboration between Russell Crowe and Ridley Scott that was a runaway success and rejuvenated a previously dead genre. Of course, this genre was subsequently appropriated ad nauseum for many years to follow. The movie would also be the beginning of a collaborative association between Crowe and Scott for a handful of movies, which ended somewhat acrimoniously with their final swashbuckler Robin Hood. And despite all the pleasantries, it is somewhat telling that they have not collaborated since 2010. Gladiator II itself is now on release everywhere, and the reception has been generally positive. 2 decades have passed between the two movies, and also inside of the Gladiator universe itself. Lucius, the son of Lucilia, and as we find out subsequently, the son of Maximus, nephew of Commodus, grandson of Marcus Aurelius, is a grown man living in a Roman outpost in North Africa. He shares many parallels with his father Maximus, and as the movie progresses, so does the film share many parallels with its predecessor. Lucius is wrong and taken into bondage and sold as a slave to be a gladiator, to come to the Colosseum to seek revenge. When he arrives in Rome, he is greeted with the sight of a 2-headed serpent in the form of Emperor Caracalla and Emperor Greta. These two insidious characters even share somewhat of a resemblance with Commodus, but split in two and given a ginger tint. We see also an interesting dichotomy between Paul Mescal's Lucius and Pedro Pascal's Acacius. They seem to be two halves of Maximus, if you like, both sharing the same ideals, but horribly conflicted and pitted against one another. Denzel Washington, for his part, seems to fit neatly into the role of Proximo, previously played by Oliver Reed as the slave owner. Many of the beats and scenes of Gladiator II pay tribute to the original of the species in a very overt way that will cause some to eye-roll and some to be satisfied with from a nostalgic point of view. The film at its core is a standard revenge flick, and that's okay. It is the copybook protagonist's journey and very much a rehash or a repackaging of the original, and we shouldn't expect too much more than the epic action. We shouldn't look too deeply into the story. This is a good night out at the cinema by anyone's standards, and it seems to be a genre in which Scott is most comfortable. Of course, within the last 25 years, cinematic technological advances are clearly on display in the special effects used, but the Colosseum in this case has actually been built to scale, and a replica containing real crowds as opposed to so much special effects that were used in the 99 produced original. The Rome that Scott has contrived here will be familiar to those who have seen the original movie, and some sweeping aerial shots are spectacular and architecturally accurate. Film locations from the original movies have been used once again, and many of the artists involved in the original production have reunited with Scott to realise his vision this time around. Pietro Scalia is back on cinematography duties and captures the Roman provinces and the Colosseum with great aplomb. Harry Gregson Williams' score does give subtle nods to Hans Zimmer's original, and we hear from time to time the strains of Now We Are Free with Lisa Gerrard's vocals, but Gregson Williams' score is its own thing and adds a new energy to the Rome that we see before us. The set design and costume design is a bit bolder and expanded than the original, I have to say, but all these elements come together and coalesce to form a familiar environment and root us within the film. Newcomer Paul Mescal is supported in his leading man role by a well-rounded and stellar cast. Connie Nielsen is one notable returnee from the original movie, playing Lucius's mother, Lucilia, as well as a small role for Derek Jacobi once again as Senator Gracchus. Denzel Washington and Pedro Pascal charismatically round out the supporting cast, and this is just as well, as although Mescal does admirably as a leading man, and even more so in the physicality of the action sequences, he simply does not ground the film in a way that Russell Crowe did in the original. Denzel Washington, however, does. Washington has a charisma and believability that render him plausible, even when reading the phone book or a newspaper. Well, maybe not the latter in this day and age. He effortlessly steals the show and simultaneously camps it up a little, while also being believable. And while Mescal is a good soldier, he is no Russell Crowe. Joseph Quinn and Fred Hessinger are the twin-headed serpent that has grown back to replace Commodus, and Rome itself, especially the Colosseum, is the other major character in Scott's tapestry here. You could argue that in some way, Scott is one of the main stars of the movie, as it is this sporadic vision that he pulls together all the strands of to weave his cinematic tapestry. You will be entertained. The film hits all the familiar plot beats of a revenge saga, with predictable, dazzling action set pieces and the requisite ne'er-do-wells being dispatched by the end of the movie. The movie also lives up to the gore and the blood-spattered spectacle of the original, as we see on the Coliseum floor at the end of the movie, as we walk out to the familiar, ethereal tones of Now We Are Free. Some will argue that this was a sequel that nobody needed, and that is partially true. However, you won't be sorry for giving this a watch. It is a good night out at the pictures, and what more could you want? If you enjoyed this review, please leave a like and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for notifications. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.